Hey folks, we're out here with another Monster Training Clan combo guide. Today we're taking a look at Stygian Guard and Awoken. Two of the stronger clans on their own, and a fairly common choice for people taking on and beating Covenant 25. Your big advantage here is consistency. You got redundant options for tanking and damage dealing. They have multiple viable tanks in both factions, multiple viable sweep units, multiple viable backroll DPS, and a variety of single space utility creatures that can do anything from help you draw cards to providing various incant triggers. The incant with their spells matter as a good synergy with Woolcan starter card Restore. Restore probably being the best starter card of all the clans, so you have that going for you. Plus other low-cost cards such as Stings. Both clans also feature very strong card draw. On the bad side, you're going to be kind of short single target removal, and you got to grab that where you can. It means you can struggle with early challenges, struggle with backline collectors, that sort of thing. Team tends to get off to a bit of a low start due to that, and the fact that Tethys is not all that great early. But he does come into his own in the late game, so let's take a look at the other champion, Tethys Titan's Bane. So Tethys is the caster minion, the fish, the glass cannon damage dealer. He's the best unit in the game for taking down boss units. He's got 60 attack power at fully upgraded, and he's quickly able to build up those frost stacks and take down pretty much any end boss. He can also reduce casting cost of spells in his conduit form, which can be really useful for dumping your hand. You can set up a spells matter floor of death with incant triggers and just basically dumping 8-9 spells a turn on top of the enemy, and that can be really effective. His third roll gives him sweep and spell vulnerability. Probably with spell vulnerabilities, you want that coming onto the units of the floor before they hit kill floor. I don't find this is a good form for Tethys, and I suggest you choose one of the other two. Which of those two forms you choose is going to really depend on your starting cards. And like all our guides, we'll be taking a look at those potential starting commons shortly. All three Tethys' form have a really minimal health pool. This guy's super vulnerable to spikes and any kind of AoE attack. You got to be careful to protect this guy. Another thing about his sweep form is, while in other clan combinations you might want this for the sweep, but the pairing of Stygian and Awoken have access to all 4 minions that have the sweep ability at uncommon. So it's unlikely you're not going to be able to find a minion with sweep if that's what you're looking for. And I think since stacking spell weakness is less powerful than dumping your hand or Frostbite, as I said, you're going to want to pick from either Frostbite or spell reduction. So we already talked about Awoken starter card. It is the best in the game, and their 8 possible random commons are also one of the strongest sets. Your possibilities from Awoken are Glimmer, Wildwood SAP, Razor Sharp Edge, Vine Grasp, Steel Enhancer, Sharpen, Restoration Detonation, and Sting. It's a strong lineup, but the card that stands out most is Glimmer. Especially in the early game, Glimmer allows you to take on challenges and snag collectors that you wouldn't be able to do with any other cards in this list. Not only can you sweep entire floors with this ability in the early game, but you're also going to be triggering the rejuvenate ability of your tanks. It does drop off pretty sharply in the late game, so you do want to get some upgrades on this. This is the best common in either clan, probably the best common in the entire game, and you should be really happy to see this in your opening deck. Your options with Glimmer are wide open because it's good in all builds. Your next best card is Wildwood SAP, and while this is a pretty good pick out of a pack, getting 2 in your starter is even better because regeneration is one of those cards that gets better the more of it that you have. Jumping up to regen 8 is pretty good early in the game, especially if you snag one of the rejuvenate tanks early. For this reason, it might be a good idea to check the Awoken Creature Hut after the first round if you started with 2 of these. It's pretty rare for a consumable to be a target that you might want to go after with double stack, but this is the exception. 8 regen is pretty exceptional, and don't hesitate to jam that, or even Eternal Stone and maybe cost reduction to be able to use it every time you go through your deck. If you're able to kill the trash with enough regen on the tank and just Tethys back there doing his thing, you're going to be able to take down any boss. It really wasn't easy rating these cards, and I think for number 3 you could have gone with any of them really, but I went with Razor Sharp Edge because it doubles as a removal spell. It's also really strong on sweeps units, which you get access to plenty of. It's pretty good on Animus of Will if you have a Heartstone on them. It's possible you don't want 2 of these. You might end up taking one out of your deck. Could be your win condition. Either way, they're great early on and reasonable late. Next, we got Vine Grasp, which is a pretty weak targeted removal spell, but it is a targeted removal spell, and that's important in this clan combination. Being freeze nice and taking out those early collectors is great. If you get 2 of these in your starting deck, you are going to be exceptionally strong early, and you're going to want to push that advantage. It's not going to last forever, so you're going to want to take on all the challenges that you can. Snag all the backline connectors and really try to snowball a little bit with those strong early game cards. Late in the game, you don't want to go plus 20 and consume or just take them out entirely, but early on, they're going to be one of your best cards. Next up, we got Steel Enhancer, and situationally, this card's better than Razor Sharp Edge. It's really useful in this clan combination because Tethys only has like 3 hit points, so doubling that's pretty good. If you do have 2 of these, you can take on harder challenges because you can boost up Tethys, and then he's an actual useful hero in the early game. Pretty good on sweep units. The card you're looking for if you're taking this is, of course, Animus of Will. Not a card I generally use in this clan combination, but if I've got the Steel Enhancers, I'll probably look for an Animus of Will, and I'll look to pivot to something that's going to use that to win the game. The video you're watching now is in Steel Enhancer to boost up the damage on our sweep unit to make sure that she's got enough attack power to get past the SAP ability. You can also use it as an emergency health boost, which isn't irrelevant. I don't think you want 2 of these in endgame, but certainly early on it's a pretty good performer. Now, Sharpen's probably better than a lot of cards higher on this list, but I think that's mostly in other clan combinations. We're not talking about using on Hornbreaker prints here. +4 attacks and spikes is pretty good, but this clan combination doesn't really have the frontline beefy multi-striker DPS guy that you want to use this on. Still, it's pretty good at taking on backline attackers, even though the 2 mana cost is pretty steep. Seeing 2 of these means you're keeping your eyes open for the Spikes Matter cards like Thorn Hollow, Shard Channeler, Gnarled Root, Petrified Cubicle, stuff like that. You get a couple of these, you upgrade them, they can be your win condition. It's not quite as good on higher Covenant levels, but on lower ones it's certainly very good. And if you're all in on spikes, maybe -1 to cost and holdover could be your win condition. 7 cards in, you find Resonation Detonation. I know a lot of people like this card more than I do, but don't like the fact that it's situational damage. Sometimes your tank is at full health and it's not doing any damage, or sometimes you just want a stronger heal. I don't think it's all that great in multiples. I mean, this can be an amazing top deck. Unfortunately, it doesn't play very nicely with armor, which you do get from the incant triggers from Stygian. Things are going well for your tanks. Maybe they're all topped up with regeneration. You're just not getting anything out of this card. But, maybe being a dead card when things are going well isn't so bad, with the upsides a decent heal and 50-point damage. Damage to the front line is something you've already got quite a bit of, which can be a good or bad thing, depending on your situation. I think if you get this in your opening deck, you're pretty good for burst healing. You could probably avoid spells like Awake or Focus Growth. Unfortunately, I think those spells are a little bit better, and I think you do want like 1, maybe 2 burst heal spells in your deck. And if you're starting with 2 of these, I think you can't take those cards because there's so much thing as too much healing. Last card on the list is Sting, and I've got it down here because you've already got so many cards that do damage to the frontline units that you probably don't need 2 more, but Sting actually works pretty well with incant triggers. Getting 2 early on means you know to grab the Stings Matters cards, like Channel Heart, Thorn Fruit, Thorn Casing. If you do get 2 Stings, look for other Sting cards like Preserve Thorns or Vine Mother, maybe a Mollusk Mage or Harness the Titans, stuff like that. Any incant card's also going to work really well with Sting. Despite Sting already being a free spell, if you're getting 2, maybe consider Tethys in Conduit mode to let you cast more damage spells to finish the guys off. You're going to end up in Monster Train's version of the Shiv deck, which, can be pretty fun to play. Now for Stygian, you're looking at 8 more possible commons plus a few copies of Frozen Lance. That card is generally not fantastic, although it should be noted it is a 0-cost incant trigger if you've got a little bit of Kethis' Conduit mode. Still, there's more powerful draw steps than 6 frontal damage, and these really are filler. There's really nothing in Awoken they synergize with all that well, and overall I consider them a weakness of this starting deck. You're going to find the real strength of Stygian in other rarities, and I would say that not only do they have one of the weaker starting cards, but their pool of commons is probably the worst in the game. Let's take a look at those possibilities. We got Flash Freeze, Titan's Tooth, Offering Token, Helical Crystallis, Crypt Builder, Ice Tornado, Titan's Gratitude, and Energy Siphon. Now my pick for the top Stygian common is Flash Freeze. This is Stygian's strongest common and the best one to get in your starter deck. It's a slam dunk, double stack, and dupe target in a Frostbite deck, and it wouldn't sleep on holdover either. Early on it's valuable targeted removal, but late game it's at its best when pointed at the boss. Cycling Flash Freeze on Seraph is a great way to ensure she starts the final round with a good chunk of Frostbite stacked up already. I'm always happy to see 2 of these in my starter, because it's a great sign I'm going to have a successful run. Next up we have another Frost spell and one of the Offering payoff cards in Titan's Tooth. This card's great because it can be featured in 3 themes. In the Frostbite deck it's great AoE damage over time. In Conduit form it's a powerful spell that you can dump on the enemy team with all the other ones. In an Offering it's a really strong payoff card. The other thing is in 2 of these 3 cases, you don't have to upgrade these, letting you focus on other spells or creatures in your deck. That's pretty good. Because of the way Offering works, this is a really good dupe target, and if you upgrade it, you can even dupe it in the Frostbite deck. You could use double stack on this, but there's generally better targets. I'd probably just go with cost reduction, or if you're cheating into play, you just don't bother upgrading it at all. Early in the game, this is a sweeper, which can be pretty good at taking on challenges. It does have a high casting cost, but it's generally worth it. This card's a little clunky to be this high in most other common pools, but for Stygian, this is a pretty solid opening pool. Next up, we got Offering Token. Now, card advantage is less important in Monster Train than in games that you don't discard it in a turn, but not irrelevant. So it needs to be noted that you're essentially down a card in the turns that you draw Offering. So in order to rank the card this highly, you need to get value out of the discard and possibly the incant trigger to make this card worthwhile. Card selection is valuable, but it's generally not worth a card to dig 1 deeper. This card does get better on higher difficulties because you got a bunch of blights in your deck. And at its best, the card discards one of the 3 cards that with the Offering ability to get the effect off of that, and then maybe triggers some incant triggers. I don't think it's a very good idea to go into Offering as a theme without a pair of commons in your starter deck that play off of Offering. And I think the best of the three to get is the Enabler, because you're really gambling that you're going to get one of the Enabler cards if you start picking off multiple payoff cards and they don't come your way. If you didn't get two into your starter, I think Holdover is a pretty good option on this card, but if you've got two in your deck, that's probably not necessary. One thing to keep in mind, there's only 5 ways to discard Monster Train. 2 of them make you dump your whole hand. 2 of them do a random discard, and this is the only one that allows you to choose a card in your hand to discard. This is by far the best enabler for Offering. I do think Offering is a good deck, which is why we have this rated third. One thing to remember is even if you do discard an Offering card to this effect, you're not gaining a card at all. You're just getting tempo, which is, sometimes it's important, sometimes better, but not always. I think given the strength of the Offering deck, if it does end up coming together, getting 2 Offering tokens in the starter is one of your better options. Next up, we got a pretty powerful frontal damage spell in Helical Crystallis. This card's pretty good early on at taking down frontliners. The drawback is that it does cost 2 mana, but you can fix that pretty easily. It's a pretty nice addition to the Conduit deck if you don't upgrade it. This card can really hang around in any deck if you just invest 1 upgrade. Not super excited about seeing this card in the starter, but it's not going to hurt you. Might even help you take on early challenges because it can kill 2 small units. But like I said, the casting cost of 2 is a little bit clunky, so if you're going to keep these around, you got to invest a little bit of cost reduction, and then it's going to be a solid role player in most decks. Next up on the list is Ice Tornado, but I will say in the right spot with the right upgrades, this card can be pretty darn good. Downside is obviously a pretty outrageous casting cost of 3, but the effect on this card is pretty strong. This card's often worth 3 mana early on. It has the versatility of being either a sweeper against a swarm or triple frontal nuke against a single unit. And since they apply their full power to each of the 3 strikes, this card loves any kind of damage upgrade. Whether you upgrade it in a shop, whether you're getting a Mollusk Mage, Harness the Titan, anything that increases the power of this card is going to have triple the effect. If you do invest in cost reduction, this card will function in any deck, but I think for the best efficiency, if you see 2 of these in your opener, you're going to want to go into Conduit Kethis and start casting it on his row. This card's just not going to cut it without synergies, upgrades, or both, so I'm rating it pretty low despite its high potential. Next up, we got another frontal damage spell in Crypt Builder. I'm not really happy to see this card in the starter because the spell's going to punish you pretty badly if you don't go into either Conduit or Offering. Payoff is there for both, but if neither option's available, you might have to pay to remove them. Also, upgrades on these don't make a lot of sense, so you pretty much have to cheat them into play. If you are able to do that, 60 damage is pretty good for a single card, but it's not enough to take down late game frontliners. And overall, I think you got a weak pull if you ended up with 2 of these. Number 7, we got Titan's Gratitude. It's not the worst card early on, but the random discard really sucks later on in the game. This is not going to be a reliable Offering enabler, although you can live the dream every once in a while. 25 damage for 1 mana isn't too bad, but we've got another card on this list that does 2 times 25 for 2 mana, and those are pretty easy to upgrade. Obviously, being a damage spell that you can't point the direction where you want to go kind of sucks. If you got one of these in your deck and you're just playing it as the last card in your hand every turn that it's up, not too bad. Having 2 is really awkward. I can't ever see picking this out of a pack, let alone wanting 2 at the start of the game. The worst card you can start the game with from Stygian is Energy Siphon. Now, maybe there's someone out there that could show me how spell weakness stacking is the most OP strategy in the game, but until they do, I'm just going to be incredibly disappointed to see 2 of these in my starter pack. It's possible I just haven't figured out how to make this card great, but so far I haven't been in very many situations where giving 1 point of spell weakness is worth a full card, and therefore I'm not too excited to see these in my starting deck. Now let's talk about win conditions. If you started with Chill Wind Tethys, this part's pretty simple. Just find a tank that can withstand Seraph for a few turns, and Tethys will take care of the rest. The simplest way to execute this plan is to build up enough stacks of regeneration in your top row frontliner. Since we're using regeneration, chances are the best unit for that is going to be one of the 2 Woken tanks, Awoken or Thorned Hollow. Of these 2, Thorned is probably your best bet, but really any unit with more than 50 hit points can do, assuming you have enough regeneration in your deck. This is a pretty simple and effective tank and spank strategy, but it's going to be exponentially harder to pull this off against Seraph the Chaste and her ability that halves buffs and debuffs on each floor, so keep that in mind. Most of your other routes to victory are going to use the busted uncommons and rares from Stygian Guard. Stacking a floor with lodestone totems or glacial seals can build up an insurmountable stack of either frost or sap on Seraph. If you get one of these 2 cards early on, or even in your starting deck, you probably want to pivot to a single floor strategy and dupe the totem a couple of times. You can fit Tethys, a 2-slot tank, and 3 totems on the floor with only 1 space upgrade. This could be a pretty solid play, and I do recommend you try it if you ever find yourself in that situation. Much like having Chill Wind Tethys means you can mostly focus on killing trash waves, finding an early Siren Stong with double stack and holdover means you can completely ignore trash waves and just focus on building a boss killing floor. This can either be one of the triple totem builds we just talked about, Conduit Tethys with a ton of incant triggers, or just the biggest tank you can possibly make and Tethys with its Frostbite stacks. The way this works is that every time the bad guys make it to the floor beneath the pyre room, you cast Siren Song, they get sent up in daze for 6 turns, and your pyre takes care of the rest. Much like the holdover Inferno combo we talked about in our Umbra Hellhorn video, this is a game-changing combo and definitely something to keep an eye out for. If you're in an offering deck, Guardian's Amulet can be double stacked to 6 sap, which can seriously add up if you discard it on Seraph's lane each turn. Sap is an incredibly powerful ability, and Guardian's Amulet is by far the most powerful offering payoff card. It's almost always worthwhile to pick up this card in the first half of the run, regardless of whether you have a discard outlet. The combination of this card and Frenzied Swarm is especially potent, stopping a unit from attacking that turn while discarding your hand, and of course, the Guardian Amulet. I like to take holdover on Frenzied Swarm, but you can also enable this combo with the Frostbite upgrade on either card, or even better, including the Uncommon Preserve in your deck. Finally, my default win condition with this deck, and the one I recommend you aim for if other synergies don't come together, is the Frostbite stacking plan. There's various ways to advance this plan, but I like to start by finding a Titan Sentry. Upgrade it with either a Heart or Large Stone. You can leave this guy on floor 1 or 2 to soak up damage and spread some Frostbite around. Endless is the best upgrade, letting you ignore his health total, simply recasting him if he dies. Putting an Icy Silo Fight behind him and the plus 10 damage increase is a nice touch. If everything comes together perfectly, I'll even dupe both these cards and play on all 3 floors. We talked about upgrading Flash Freeze with Double Stack or Holdover, and this card's a nice addition as well. You can even mix in Titan's Tooth, though you're going to need some cost reduction or the offering synergy to make that work. The Frostbite plan is pretty consistent, and although you'll rarely get all the pieces you're looking for, you'll get enough to make a nice run of it most games. If the game doesn't steer you in another direction early on, my advice is to start building the Frostbite deck and see where the run takes you. So here we are on Fel, and we got a reasonable example of what this deck should come together like. We got a larger Awoken Hollow than we like to see. We don't usually like to put Large Stone on him, but him and Tethys will fit on the top row with no utility or additional creatures. We've got that Frenzied Swarm we talked about to give Dazed. It's got holdover on it and cost reduction, so we're going to be able to cast this on 1 unit every turn to make sure that they don't attack. And then we've got the Guardian's Amulet here with Permafrost and Double Stack to work with it. We don't actually need the Permafrost because we have the holdover on the Frenzied Swarm, but we had that on there before we got it, so that's a little redundant, but, helpful. We've got an extra offering token to enable discard on turns that we don't have the Guardian's Amulet. We'll probably remove this a little bit later in the run because we don't really need it anymore. We got the Glimmer for AoE sweeping. We went a little bit crazy with cost reduction on certain units. We've got a Titan Sentry that we're probably going to dupe later on. This guy sits on the lower floors and spreads around his Frostbite. Eventually he dies, but he's got 100 hit points, so he'll be around for a while. And we got tons of regeneration. This one's got Eternal Stone, so you can cast every turn. This one's got Double Stack, and this one we're going to do one or the other, but we made sure they got all nice low cost so that we can cast all our other spells as well. So really focusing with only 2 creatures in the deck that have already been upgraded. We're hitting all of the magic upgrade shops, and we're going to see how we do. So we're going to put down Awoken Hollow and Tethys up top. Got this Purge in our deck. We're not too happy about that, but we got reasonable pyre health. We could probably afford to put down the Titan Sentry here. And we'll just boost up our Awoken Hollow. This guy will kill off all these observers or resolvers, so we don't get too many weights of condition in our deck. So that'll be helpful, at least until he dies, which will eventually. We're probably not going to get him. So now we've got an offering token, and we've got Fel down here. So we'll probably ditch the Titan's Tooth down here, just to sweep everything, get a little bit of Frostbite on the boss. Come up here, get our regeneration stacked up, already 11 stacks. Just throw that out there, throw that out there, and get that nice and cleared out so that when enemies do get to the top, we can get rid of them. Now we will get rid of the ultimate, whatchamacallit, just to make sure we don't take more damage. Cost reduction on the restore helps here. We're able to stack it up. And we'll just dump all of this on Fel, because we don't really want these in our deck anyway. Don't need to preserve the Guardian's Amulet because we've got it. Alright, now Fel's here, and we've got the Frenzied Swarm, so at the end of the turn, we're probably going to want to dump our hand down here, and we'll also get the Titan's Tooth out, so what we'll do is we'll cast all the other spells that we're planning on casting this turn, which probably actually aren't too many. don't really see any need to put the Glimmer down there, so we'll cast it here. And we got nothing else to do, so we'll put a Dazed on the enemy units, which is also going to get fell. I'm just going to discard the 2 offering cards, get that sap stacked up, get some Frostbite on her, and also get her Dazed. So that's good, and we're just going to continue doing that as many times as we can. When we get to the end boss, our deck will probably be a little bit thinner, so we'll be able to do it more efficiently. This is a little unfortunate. We've got 2 of these penances, but we are able to discard them with the Frenzied Swarm. We're not going to want those clogging up our deck, though, so we will get rid of 1. Top up the regeneration, and then we'll just do the same thing that we did before. Drew the Guardian's Anagram, which is great. We drew Titan's Tooth. And then we don't take the damage from the Ultimate Penance, but we will draw that again, so that's not ideal. We'd rather play them. Might get some leakage up top, just because we're not really equipped to take on large numbers of these creatures, so that's not ideal, but we'll see how it goes. Get them dazed at least, and yeah, he'll get 1 hit in, but that's not too bad. Once we have our second Frostfish here, our leak should probably cease. Fell's in the middle row this time. We'll get rid of that. Just going to top up some regeneration. This is free, so we'll cast it. And then we'll do our daze. Get a little bit more frost on her. Looks like we're going to get a pretty bad leak up there, but not much you can do about that. Alright, final wave. So we're up to 30 stacks of the regeneration. That's pretty decent. We'll get a sap on her. It's going to take 564 damage here. That's quite a bit. I guess that's just from this guy and the sap stacks, probably. And that should probably give enough Frostbite to just die on her own, but we'll finish her off. This guy's not quite dead yet, so... There we go. Just put the gaze on her again. And, whoa, that's a pretty good draw. Get all that stuff on her. And she's toast, and we're full. So that's the idea. It's not an ideal version of the Frost deck, especially since we've got a Conduit Kethwis, but yeah, it's working pretty well. Alright, here we are on Seraph. Between where we last talked, we managed to find an Ancient Synergy, which is great with Conduit Tethys, because you can cast this for free every turn. So we put Holdover on it, and Magic Power. Found an Awake, which is a double-stacked regen item, so that'll help us in the end. We removed some cards, and we duped our Guardian's Amulet, so... We felt like that. Oh, and we duped the Titan Sentry too. So, pretty decent start there. I'm going to play this out. Probably going to put... yeah, we'll put Titan Sentry down here. And then we're going to end up getting some sap and some frost on the boss just to start off on the very first turn, so that's great. These guys aren't going to last too long, but they're going to last for a while anyway. Should get the next one here. Put him in. Let's work on getting our regen up here. Didn't I discard the one with... That was the regen 10 one. Good. I thought I screwed that up. Looks like we're good to go here. We'll get rid of that. We want these out of our deck, so we're going to get rid of them. Hit him with the Ancient Synergy. Hit him with the Titan's Tooth. So what we want to do is, as much as possible, we want to just get those stacks up on Seraph, because we're fairly confident about being able to get through these minion waves. We'll see if that is the case. Get rid of that. This is not the consume one. So let's just burn a restore here. Cast our holdover spell. Get the sap on and put him with a Glimmer. This seems to be going fairly well. Alright, let's get rid of restore. And we'll get that recurring Wildwood SAP. Get a free restore. We'll use the Ancient Synergy to keep the holdover going. And here we're going to offering out probably the Guardian's Amulet. And now we can take 1 damage to get the Awake. I think we will. We don't want this in our deck, so we're going to consume it. I think we've got enough junk cards that we can afford to lose those. Well, we've screwed up and we've gotten rid of our Frenzy Swarm, so that's not great. So we're going to have to make sure that we keep our offering token in hand. So I think we'll burn this Titan's Tooth. Which will let us use the Ancient Synergy. And we'll offering out this Guardian's Amulet. Let's cast a Titan's Tooth for free. And getting rid of these Vengeful Shards. It's unfortunate that we screwed up and we got rid of our Frenzied Swarm, but I think we're going to be okay anyway. Not ideal for a strategy demonstration video, but we'll leave it in. Okay. We're going to have to consume something. Oh, I guess we can consume this Glimmer. Probably not going to need that again. And then we'll use our Ancient Synergy. We'll probably let this guy leak. Barely. Alright, so we'll get rid of a restore. We'll hit him with the Ancient Synergy. I'm going to offering out another Guardian's Amulet. Using Awake to get up to 41 regen, 42 regen. Throw that out there. We'll take a point of damage, we're not too worried about that. Just lost one of our fish. Alright, so now we're at the point where not much matters in the way of holding onto cards. We definitely don't want to burn the Ancient Synergy because that's great. We'll use our last stack of Wildwood SAP and we'll offering out another Guardian's Amulet. Just got quite a few stacks of that now. I wish he would die here, because I don't want to waste her stacks on Titan Sentry, but I don't see any way around that. We'll send out our Titan Sentry and get rid of as many of these pyres as we can. Yeah, it's too bad he didn't die. That would have been better. Alright, we're probably not going to want to cast Awake on the last turn, so we can safely burn that. We didn't draw Offering here, but we can still cast a free Ancient Synergy. We get a little leak, but we'll be alright. Maybe we won't, we'll see. Oh, there we won't have to. 5 damage off, and we'll save the Guardian's Amulet for the last turn. Looks like Seraph is still going to have quite a few stacks of sap, which is good. That's what we want. And can we get him out of there before we cast our Ancient Synergy? Doesn't look like it. We're offering out the amulet. We'll cast the other amulet. And I think that's the win. So despite misplaying on the very first turn and consuming our most important card, we were still able to come up with a win. I guess we'll leave that in the video because that was real life and there's no reason to pretend that I don't make mistakes. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe.